think about. Death is swept under the carpet in our country. In the hospital, they try to keep you alive from utter desperation. They won't know the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody in church forever. try to keep you alive of utter desperation. They won't take the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody wants to be in church forever. Death is swept under the carpet in the hospital. They try to keep you alive utter desperation. They won't know the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody wants to be in church forever.
Welcome back to the Trauma Cast, a podcast where women talk about their trauma. Now, Brandy, you actually mentioned that you had some trauma on the way here.
Yeah, I was coming in on the elevator and I was bumped.
That does sound traumatic.
You know, to be honest, I've just dealt with so much trauma in my life that sometimes I don't realize when an event is traumatic.
Now, I can sense that you're repressing the trauma associated with the bumping, but at some point you're going to have to explore that trauma in depth if you want to feel whole again. As a child of divorce, I can attest to that.
Oh my God, that must have been so traumatic.
Very much so.
Yeah, you know, if that trauma's too fresh, I don't want it.
My parents just walked in the room and said, "We've been waiting for you to finish college to break the news, but here it is."
Oh, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
As someone who recently went through a traumatic breakup 9 years ago, I can say...
Oh my God, I didn't realize that you were only 9 years into dealing with the trauma of a breakup. Can you talk about it, or is the trauma too fresh?
When you spend every day with someone for weeks and then out of nowhere they just decide to stay with their husband, it can have traumatic consequences.
Poor wounded soul. The fact that you got out of bed this morning to come to this studio is nothing less than heroic.
Now that's a way to spend International Women's Day. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, here to the bestpoliticalshow.com, and we have a lot of absolutely crazy news to get into today. As of course, there's a lot of beef right now happening between Rabbi Shmuley and Candace Owens. There's a crazy Donald Trump tweet that we are going to be breaking down on Truth Social. We have Biden's State of the Union. We have the actual State of the Union, as well as a lot of crazy fight news surrounding Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, Ngannou, Joshua. We'll get into that, plus a lot more, all here on thebestpoliticalshow.com for the next 2 hours. So share this broadcast with your friends and family members. It is more imperative than ever, and one of the few ways that this independent media organization still continues to be here today, mainly through your support and help. So we can't thank you guys enough for getting the word out there, telling people about this podcast, these conversations that really do strive to inform you about everything that's happening in this world from an unbiased, from a perspective that, of course, is not from the corporate media. You could also participate in the conversation, and one way you guys get to do that is by signing up to lukeunfiltered.com. And by doing so, you guys get the ability to call into the show and ask us whatever questions you want, unscripted, in the moment, from members of lukeunfiltered.com. So far, we've been getting incredible individuals calling in, asking some really awesome questions. So, of course, we will be taking questions in about an hour and a half from now, when the conversation deviates towards a platform that allows spur of a moment, honest, real conversations, which we, of course, strive to have here on this platform. As, of course, we also will be reading super chats, rumble rants, and we hope you guys check out mysuperchat.com, a service that only takes a 3% service charge and allows your super chats to show up on screen. As, of course, your super chats, rumble rants, mysuperchats.com help support this independent media organization and the conversations that we're having here with some really incredible human beings. One of those individuals today is the one and only, not controversial at all, Mr. Jake Shields. Jake, for the people who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
That's a tough question. I guess mostly as mostly known as a fighter. I mean, fought professional for 20 years, UFC for a while. I was also Strikeforce champ, which was a huge show at the time. Fought in Japan, massive shows out there. So mostly a fighter. In the last couple of years, I started got bored and started tweeting, and I guess kind of account blew up a little bit in politics. I don't really consider myself that political, but for some reason my account's getting big, and I'm starting to be known there as well.
Yeah, you definitely spur on some very interesting conversations, most of which are probably going to be held in an hour from now. And, you know, some people love you, some people hate you, yeah. but you definitely have a way of gaining a lot of different attention. We're going to get into that, plus a lot more. Thank you so much for joining us.
Everyone loves me in the real world. They just hate online. But the same people that hate online, when they see me, they come up, take pictures, be friends. People need to realize some people get sensitive over online hate. It's not real. It's just people arguing. When they see you, they come up, they talk to you, and they're like, "Oh, I was wrong about you. I like you." So it's not real.
You could be intimidating them, just a tiny bit there. but it is true, and I have the same experience. You know, everyone kind of talks trash, and people are actually more likely to say something negative than they are positive online. And this is something that even people at Google told me. They were like, "Hey, don't worry. People are more vocal when it comes to negative stuff." So in the real world, we're not living in algorithms. We're not living in curated false content, and the world is totally different than what you see it online. Clint knows that as well, and his furry friends definitely agree, right, Clint?
That's right. They're very kind, they're very comforting in person and online, I might add.
And they're very fluffy.
Yes, very fluffy. I'm very happy to have Jake in studio. He and I have been following and talking for a couple of years now. Dude's a legend. He sparks the most hardcore conversations on the internet, as far as I'm concerned. In fact, we talked about the Indian assault story that was spurred by you just yesterday, so I'm sure we'll get into that later. Clint Russell hosts...
I thought that was not controversial, but apparently that was. That was something I thought that wasn't controversial, and that turned out to be extremely controversial.
Well, this is the truth, is that if you act like a man with reasonable levels of testosterone, that is controversy. Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown, co-host of Tower Gang, which you should not watch, but definitely do follow me on Twitter at Liberty Lock Pod. Liberty Lockdown's the show, and I will be back on YouTube tomorrow.
How dare you discuss protecting women, Jake?
Right.
How dare you?
That's divisive and controversial, I've learned.
On International Women's Day, women could stand up for themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, I couldn't believe so many men think that you should just watch your wife get raped. that was a wake-up call to me. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Now I always hear girls bitching about how hard dating is. Now I go, okay, I thought they were being dramatic princesses. Now I'm like, okay, these are the guys they're dating. Maybe they're right.
On that note, Steph is here pushing the buttons.
Yeah, happy Women's Day. This is Steph. We are Change. You can find me on Insta or on X at StephWRC.
We're going to need a lot of feedback from you today, Steph, just to represent the women.
Yes.
Okay?
All right. Well, guess what? I didn't know today was Women's Day until you guys told me.
Well,
You're a bad woman, Steph.
Really?
You know,
Not taking advantage of your day.
Me and Mark Lobliner decided to take advantage of International Women's Day. As of course, yesterday on this show, he became Macy, and we hit the gym, broke some world records. You can see that on my Instagram right now, Luke We Are Change. And yeah, Steph, feel free to absolutely stand up for all the women out there and voice your concerns here during this very interesting conversation that probably will be getting a little spicy in a little bit here on Rumble. As of course, the family-friendly kind of topics that we're going to be getting into now are the State of the Union, something that I didn't watch. Full transparency, I took Mark tactical training yesterday. Clint watched it. Jake, I don't think you watched it either.
You really need to watch State of the Union. I mean, it's Biden. What's he going to say? He's going to mumble around. He's going to talk about giving money to Israel, talk about illegal aliens.
A little bit.
Well, this is the surprising take on it because now we have an article here from the Daily Mail, and then Clint will be our guy here who's going to have to lead this conversation.
Yeah, no
but we
problem.
have this article here that is titled, Joe Biden, 81, yelled through his State of the Union, but was gutsy and shut down age concerns with a burst of vitality. Top speechwriter says. Now, Clint, is this like 1984 Orwell a double talk, or was he really vibrant and strong, like the leader that he pretends to be?
I mean, I will say that he was much more energized than I expected for, given in his prior press conferences, it sounded like he was like barely functioning. They had him jacked to the gills. There's actually pictures that you can see where he looks like he's, high out of his mind. And honestly, I think he was. But in terms of energy, it was great. But what's fascinating about Biden at this stage of his life is like when he's energetic, the only way he can convey that is with absolute rage. So he came across very, very angry. So that was the main takeaway. That was like it was a very kind of ominous, threatening tone throughout. So I think that,
but that's the messaging that we've been seeing from him for a very long time. That he wants to look like he is menacing. He is very strong. They had that one speech that he gave about the MAGA crowd with all the red lights behind him and him really looking angry and concerned. Older people get really frustrated very easily. Yeah. And the byline here for this article that kind of contradicts what the original article said here reads, despite a bit of coughing, a lot of slurring, and several bizarre slip-ups, the president defied expectations. Those expectations aren't really that high.
They're really low.
Yeah, they're not that good here. But again, I didn't watch it. I didn't want to watch it. I was like, I had the opportunity. I was like, tactical training or watch this old geezer kind of spew his propaganda out there.
Let me just give my takeaway since I'm the only one that watched it. By the way, I did a Twitter
Wait,
space.
Steph, did you watch it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Most
we
Americans didn't watch it.
Miss much. Break it down.
Give us the rundown.
The main reason I watched it is because Tenet Media was holding a Twitter Spaces last night, or an X Spaces, I guess you call it, and they asked me to contribute. So that was a great conversation. So shout out to Tenet Media. But yeah, the primary takeaways I had, the opening stanza is about 10 to 12 minutes long, and it is 100% dedicated to threatening Vladimir Putin and Russia. Continuing to stand with Ukraine, continuing to send billions of additional dollars, which are debasing our currency, to this completely unwinnable war. So that was the opening, and by doing so, he led in by analogizing it to I think it was 1942 and FDR giving a State of the Union in the lead up to World War II. And that was not at all comforting. So I, as a libertarian non-interventionist, I'm absolutely mortified. He then spends the next 30 minutes going into this economic diatribe where he's just talking about socialism, but repackaged in a way that like all of the inflationary pressures we're dealing with and the fact that we can't afford anything and that we're all in debt, he's just like, I'm going to bail you out. I'm going to bail you out. I'm going to print this. I'm going to lend this. I'm going to do this. And it's just like, it's an economic disaster. So from my Austrian economics background, I'm mortified once again. Then he pivots into Israel-Palestine. He's kind of hemming and hawing, but still he's standing with Israel.
Let's not get started on that issue yet.
Yes, I'll hold off on that.
Let's wait a little bit here. There's a clip that's been going around right now of Biden actually talking about Lincoln Riley, a name that he mispronounced. I want to play the clip here because I think it'll be interesting to watch in full context here.
It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner, not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals?
What?
To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly.
I kind of like that this was more of a group discussion, especially with MTG that brought up Lincoln Riley, and then President Biden actually held up the pin that she gave him right before the State of the Union, and he did say that she lost her life because of an illegal, which now he's being attacked for.
But
as now,
he
go
goes
ahead.
and passes it off and says, but tons of people are killed by legal. I think you're kind of like changing the subject. I think it's no big deal. And then talk about, we're going to keep letting them in, but we'll give them a faster hearing. What's that mean? Most of them won't even show up to their hearing.
Yeah, that's absolutely
the
true.
man's responsible for the border to try to act like it's no big deal. I thought that was kind of a cheap shot to be like, she was killed by illegal. But what about people that weren't killed by illegals? Like, well, right, she was killed by them. That's all we care about right now. Let's stop letting these people in. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and he actually slipped up and he said 10,000 people killed by illegals, and I was like, what? Is there really that many? But what was fascinating about it, yes, it was MTG that spurred that when he was first entering. She dons a 45 hat, which you're not supposed to do, and then he hands her this, or she hands him this pin that says Lincoln Riley, and she says, say her name. He then pivots and he uses this and he tries to dunk on her by saying her name. He mispronounces, he calls her Lincoln Riley, and then he thinks that the Riley's parents or the Riley family is in the audience, which they're not there. He looks up to the rafters to go like, I've lost a son too. I understand. They're not even there. It was all just a train
Sounds
wreck.
like a dementia patient, basically.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and just full
and
correction.
this is like doing good for him.
Yeah, it's Lincoln Riley, not Lincoln Riley. But you know, the guy. I mean, he didn't sound as the Daily Mail document. He didn't sound gutsy. He didn't show vitality through that conversation from that little clip that I saw, at least. But he's getting a lot of criticism now, especially from the progressive Democrats that are now saying that he should have never said illegal. He should have said undocumented.
Oh my God.
They're illegal. They illegally came into the United States, not through a port of entry. They violated American law. They're illegal. But there's a big rift within the Democratic Party. There's a rift within the Republican Party. There's the old guard. There's the neocons. There's the kind of pure McCain, Romney statists, and then there's the kind of Trump, Freedom, Rand Paul caucus that represents larger ideas of personal responsibility and actually, you know, caring about what the people of the United States care and think about. There's also a rift that's pretty interesting within the Democratic Party, as a lot of people in the primaries are voting present when it comes to voting for the next president of the United States, as they're protesting a lot of the Biden policies that they see that are, quote, not woke enough for them. So this to me is just...
I think a lot of it's the support of Israel, too. They see him, you know, giving them weapons when they're committing
absolutely
genocide. I think,
that's one of the main issues.
Seeing that and how are they going to vote for him.
We're definitely going to get into that Middle Eastern topic.
Okay. YouTube doesn't allow that?
The YouTube does not allow...
You can't talk about the
even
evil
criticisms.
things Israel's doing?
Yeah, you can't. Which is crazy. You can't talk about health stuff. You can't talk about you know. I got to be careful with even
Israel
how I
has
say.
no power, but you can't talk about them on YouTube. They do not hold extra power. I want to be clear about that.
It's not like, you know, their lobby has, you know,
AIPAC.
Influence, right? But we'll get into that.
All right. Change the subject.
We're like, oh
Might
man,
get us like banned. You really can't say these things.
You can't. You can't.
To me, that's just insane.
So
It is insane.
what
It is
YouTube does,
insane.
especially during live, and this is our strategy, and I feel like I owe it to kind of explain it to you
It's
and
so
the audience, because
baffling. You can't say this basic stuff.
I explained it to the audience a a lot of the times too. YouTube has an algorithm where it reads everything you say on the live stream, and if you say specific curse words or hot topic or controversial things, they pick it up on the algorithm and they start showing it to less and less people. So my strategy is, YouTube is the platform where there's a big battle. We could kamikaze into this battle and eliminate ourselves, or we could fight between inside of the trenches where the lines have drawn. Then after the show is done here on YouTube, it's also a family friendly show. I know a lot of people who watch the show with their children. That's why I don't curse here. And then 1 hour later, we go to Rumble. On Rumble, we say whatever we want.
So they won't totally ban it; they'll bury it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they'll strike you too. I'm currently suspended from YouTube. So
So we were one of the first channels to be fully demonetized ever on YouTube way long ago, even before demonetization was a thing. No one even knew what it was. It wasn't even called demonetization. There was like, we're just gonna screw you over.
I'll wait an hour to talk about God's chosen people.
So my strategy in this kind of field is we'll talk about the issues that are kind of middle of the line, that do kind of bring in more Kyles and Karens, that bring in more of the normies. Don't freak them out. Bring them in, and then slowly and surely put them on Rumble, and then on Rumble, boom, we kind of beat them over the head with the larger kind of questions, the larger kind of conversations that are more family friendly, and we support a free speech platform, and then we try to awaken all the normies out there, and we try to bring them on a platform that, of course, supports free speech, fights for free speech, and actually is able to conduct real debates and ideas that actually progress and push humanity forward. Because if you look at the censorship of speech, it is so disgusting because it stops understanding. It stops this larger kind of dividing. It pushes a larger divide and conquer agenda, and it radicalizes people as well. So censorship is extremely dangerous. That's the world we're living in, and this is why we're talking about the State of the Union now. We'll be talking about the Middle East in about a little bit.
We are walking the tyranny tightrope, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing our best.
But since we have an opportunity to still speak to the normies, we'll slowly get them in there, as I think the conversation even about immigration and illegals is also something that is extremely important, and it's on a lot of people's issues and concerns. But sadly, the corporate media doesn't even like to talk about it.
I think it's one of the most important issues. They're just flooding 8 million people in the last couple of years coming through. They're getting free stuff, free healthcare, unvetted. People coming through legally. I have friends trying to come through legally. If they can't leave the country with their visas, these guys are just coming through the border. We don't know. All these murders are starting to pop up now. There's been multiple of them. I don't remember all the names, but multiple people have been killed in the last couple of weeks. It's absolutely absurd. It's being done intentionally too. They act like it's not. The borders are open. They're flooding them in. They're flying them in planes. It's someone's behind this. They're orchestrating it to try to take the downfall of the country. Seems like to me.
They're literally organizing flights from Latin American countries saying, you don't even have to cross the border. You don't even have to walk illegally. We'll help you. We'll ship you in. And they've done it to hundreds of thousands of people that we know about. And we had to fight. We accidentally found out about that. Now imagine all the stuff that they're still doing right now that we have no idea about. And the Republicans have absolutely failed in their leadership when it comes to addressing this. There's even criticisms of Trump, with many people saying he hasn't even gone far enough when it comes to dealing with this larger issue. And when you kind of boil it down, a lot of this does come from the larger kind of Koch brothers initiative that really wants cheap slave labor out there, that wants to, of course, make themselves rich, have all the labor market rigged in a way where, of course, it benefits them and it screws everyone else over. And that's exactly what's happening. And that's why the old guard is representative of those ideas. And I think why the Republicans haven't been that successful in stopping it, especially with individuals like Mitt Romney out there, that literally came out after the State of the Union and said that Biden, quote, wanting to crack down on rich people and taking cheap shots at Republicans is not good. But what he's doing right now in his foreign policy initiatives with the situation in the Middle East and in Europe is good. And he's doing a good job there, which highlights a big kind of disconnect between him and the American people.
Let me just remind people that you had a choice between Ron Paul and Mitt Romney, and the GOP went with Mitt Romney. That's your guy. The guy who says that sure, I've got my minor disagreements like the inflationary disaster and the economic insanity that is the Biden administration, but he's great on foreign policy as he sleepwalks us into World War III. We could have had Ron Paul. Oh.
Yeah, I think the average American doesn't understand how big of a deal the debt is. They don't understand there's interest on it, and the only way the interest is getting so big, it's like more than the military budget now, or about even to it. People think you can just keep adding to it, but you can't. The only way to counter it is to print more money, which is going to cause hyperinflation.
Yep.
So actually, as everyone's seen in the last couple of years, look how expensive shit is now. You go in there, prices are shocking. Like I do pretty well, and I look at prices sometimes, and I'm like, what the hell? When you go out, things have like close to doubled a lot of places.
Oh yeah, at least
it's going to get a lot worse as they keep printing money.
Well, the current projections is that the interest on the debt alone over the next 12 months will be about double what we spend on our national defense.
Yeah.
And our national defense, for those that don't understand, is $875 billion or so, which is more than the 10 largest militaries aside from America on Earth. And our interest on our national debt will be double what all those 10 nations spent. It's crazy.
Yeah, people don't understand this is not something that's going to go away. The only way to do it is print more money.
Yep.
I saw the other day, it was written out, the average taxpayer, I think, owes like $288,000 towards the debt. So imagine if you were $280,000 in debt and your credit cards were maxed out, and instead you just kept raising the debt limit, but you're making whatever the average American is making. It's just not, there's no possible way to pay it back. The only thing to do is to start printing money, which your money's going to be worth a lot less.
Yeah, exactly. Which
we
is
have the
exactly
debt
why
clock.
Bitcoin just hit 70K.
Yep, and it's probably going to go a lot higher than that. We have the debt clock pulled up, and it's $266,499 debt per American taxpayer.
Yeah, crazy, right?
That's a lot of money.
That's $1 million a household if you have a family of four.
And there's interest on top of that. And we're borrowing more, so that debt is skyrocketing up. So there's that, and there's adding debt to it.
Right.
Most person, what people make? What's the average salary? $60,000.
$40,000, I think.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to pay that back. The interest alone on that, they couldn't pay it back.
Right.
But don't worry, Biden's going to help everyone out as he's going to wage a $3 trillion war on the mega rich with now a 25% tax on billionaires, as he announced during the State of the Union, which is going to give Americans $400 a year to go towards their, quote, first home. Yeah, that's a great policy. That's definitely going to help us, right, Clint?
Yeah, well, it also adds... He said that with this proposal, it would bring in additional $500 billion in tax revenue over the next decade. Our national debt has increased by $500 billion in less than the past 6 months. So, I mean, what we're talking about is, like, if you just consider, like, he's going after the wealthiest people in this country saying, if we could just have them pay their fair share, well, then think of all the benefits that would provide you. There are no benefits to be provided. Our debt is totally unsustainable, and they make
and correct
no
me if I'm
reference to
wrong. Even if we took all the money from the richest billionaires in the United States, it still wouldn't make a dent in the national debt, right?
I don't think it would even. I don't think it would even cover 1 year of expenditures if you were to take the 1% wealth away. We're toast.
Yeah, I read somewhere that it's going to start jumping by like it's predicted to jump. I think like a $1 trillion 100 days.
Yeah, if you
insane.
study hyperinflation, especially what happened in Germany, in Zimbabwe, and in Venezuela, it's always a kind of a slow creep where things are getting expensive, and then the prices just excel exponentially, and it just obliterates the poorest people in the United States and in those countries that have to deal with these reckless policies. As of course, once the ship sails, there's no going back. There's no way of unprinting all of this money. And to think that you're going to increase the corporate minimum tax and that's going to help everyone, that's going to screw more people over. As of course, that will bring a lot of pressures on a lot of individuals who are just trying to survive. The cost of everything will go up once taxes go up. As of course, people think, they have this idea, especially a lot of leftists. Oh, the corporations, they're all evil. They're all ruthless. I have a corporation. A lot of people have different corporations. Why am I going to now have to pay more in order to give money to countries in the Middle East and Ukraine and in Europe right now? Why am I giving you more of my money? As of course, if you look at the expenditures of the federal government, a lot of it is given to, of course, other mega rich corporations that are just friends with the government. It's absolutely infuriating and insane.
They bring in, I think, $5 trillion or so in tax receipts annually, and they spend $7 to $8 trillion. So our national debt and our deficit is completely out of control. And Biden has the audacity to try and frame this by saying we have dropped our national deficit by $1 trillion annually in his term. But he's talking about the decrease from the all-time world record-setting high of 2020 when you had crazy printing and you locked down the economy, and he's bragging because now we're spending $1 trillion less than that, but it's still many trillions more than they're taking in. This is totally unsustainable. And to Luke's point about the way hyperinflation becomes exponential, all you have to think about is the chart that Al Gore popularized when it came to climate change. They called it the hockey stick chart. That's exactly what happens, is that your currency slowly becomes worthless, and then it becomes confetti. And we're approaching confetti.
Yeah, I don't think we realize that we could be 10 years off from just complete, if something doesn't change, just complete collapse of the currency. People are totally unaware of that.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I remember being in Zimbabwe and talking to people that were at the supermarket, and the time that they walked into the supermarket and walked out, the prices have literally tripled. And they're like, holy freaking cow, this is absolutely insane. I remember sitting down in Venezuela during the peak of the crash there, and the restaurants, they literally just had stickers that would change the prices throughout the day because the price of everything would go up so dramatically. And you could just see the layers of stickers on menus as you literally had to watch your back in order not to be freaking robbed by a lot of people who've been put in very desperate situations as crime and criminality were essentially legalized in places like Venezuela. You saw the same kind of thing. You see the same kind of ingredients. You see the same kind of recipe in all these other failed states. And it definitely feels like the United States is following in those footsteps. And it's terrifying because I talk to those people. I look them in the eyes. And the horror you see of people losing everything because of the government screwing them over. It's something that has petrified me because I know it's coming here to the United States.
Yeah, it sucks if you work so hard to get yourself set up for a future. You think you have money put away and all this, and it could just collapse. And it seems like it's being intentional to me. It doesn't seem like it's incompetence. Maybe it's some incompetence, but sometimes it seems like some of the people are doing this intentionally. They know exactly what inflation is caused by. But remember after all the printing and COVID, it's like, oh, we don't understand why inflation is 10% a year. It's like, yeah, you know exactly why. It's all the money you just printed.
Yeah, a lot of people are responding to this direct plan by Joe Biden, and they're saying it's going to cost jobs, it's going to make inflation worse, and they're just doing this in order to try to buy more votes. And with the way that they have kind of rigged the game, especially with immigration, especially when it comes to congressional representation, they could be in power forever, and they're going to be doing more and more of these policies. And they think, people still think that this is a good idea. They cheer it on. They're like, yeah, we're gonna get those bad guys. Shrinkflation is because corporations are evil. Meanwhile, they don't understand all the other economic pressures that is wiping out small businesses. Small mom and pop businesses are almost impossible to survive right now, especially with all the rules, regulations, taxes. I mean, even just looking at some of the tax burden we have and the bills and the freaking payroll and all the taxes that I'm like, this is infuriating. This is absolutely infuriating because some places in Europe, they spend a lot of taxes. They say, hey, we actually get something back. Whether they do or not, they at least have this notion like, hey, we get something back. What do we get back here in the United States? Nothing.
Yeah, tore up roads. Yeah, not much.
A bunch of people pissed off about us and our foreign policy all around the world. Mm-hmm. A bunch of people that have been armed. Meanwhile, they tell me what I can and cannot have illegally when it comes to my self-defense and protection. Meanwhile, they drop off a whole bunch of freaking latest technological advanced weaponry in Afghanistan and Syria and all over the Middle East and the Ukraine as well, where a lot of weapons have gone missing. And it truly is just us paying these taxes to endanger ourselves and to destroy our way of life and to rob us of any kind of liberty or pursuit of happiness. It's the opposite of what the government pledged itself to be from the very beginning.
And to endanger the world. I mean, Biden is he's doing everything in his power, it seems, to risk a world war. And it just, every time there was a pause in his speech and the entire Democrats, they're all wearing white. They all stand up and they applaud, and it was just like a slap in the face every single time. And it was probably 100+ standing ovations in this 70-minute speech. It was horrifying to watch, honestly. And I've been a libertarian my whole life basically, and I've always despised politicians. But last night was particularly vicious for me. I was viscerally angry. I really was.
And there was also an arrest last night that I think is worth talking about since it relates to something that we just were talking about specifically in Afghanistan, as a Gold Star dad was thrown out of Biden's State of the Union for shouting, quote, "Remember Abbey Gate," over the 13 U.S. service members that have lost their lives during the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. Now, what happened in Afghanistan truly just highlights a bewildering situation where the U.S. government said, yeah, these guys, let's just give them, we were fighting them for like 19 years. We spent trillions of dollars fighting them and growing opium and selling it around the world and allowing human trafficking. Let's reward these guys by giving them all of our weapons and weaponry. And we essentially launched a war on the Taliban that made the Taliban that much stronger, that much more dangerous. I believe there was other sinister motives, specifically when it comes to countering Iran because of this blunder. I don't think it was a blunder. I think a lot of people think that this U.S. government is incompetent. They think it's stupid. They think bubbling Joe Biden is behind the scenes actually calling the shots here.
No,
he's
not calling shots.
It's far more sophisticated. It's far more advanced. It's far more intelligent than we give it credit to. And a lot of the times they put people like George W. Bush up there. They push people like Joe Biden up there. Be like, look at these bubbling idiots. They don't know what they're doing. Look at all these coinky-dinks they're making. Look at all these accidents they're making. They're not accidents. If you look at every one of those policies that they implemented, it hurt and screwed over the people of the world, but it helped a lot of the special interest groups that really do pay for a lot of these individuals, that finance them, that bankroll them, and are in charge of essentially calling the shots for them.
Yeah, I want to say something interesting. The Afghanistan war. Look at that. Okay, we went to war with Afghanistan. 20 years. We didn't get Osama bin Laden. We threw the Taliban out. As soon as we left, the Taliban took right back over. They actually controlled most of the country while we were there because I have a bunch of friends in Afghanistan. So we only controlled a couple small cities. So we literally accomplished nothing except for trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives, hundreds of thousands of Afghan lives. As soon as that war ended, what happened? Within how long was it? A month or two? We were at war with Ukraine. It's like we need to sell these weapons. It's just this war, and we're going to lose that war too.
Yeah, the system needs a war. The intel agencies need a war, and they'll do anything in order to start it and to provoke it. And I would kind of disagree with you a little bit. They did get something out of it. They got a lot of opium, right? They got a lot of human trafficking. As the United States military was literally protecting and working with individuals that were hurting small children in very unspeakable, horrible, frickin' ways. You look at Ukraine, there's also a lot of women, a lot of children being hurt in unspeakable ways. During times of conflict, during a war, the intel agencies, they're able to do all their sinister, illegal things. They're able to get all their black, shadowy budgets through. They're able to, of course, launder their money. They're able to traffic human beings. They're able to, of course, get the drugs out there, get the weapons out there. And if you look at Iran-Contra, they haven't changed. Nothing has stopped. They were never held accountable for their larger egregious actions with the Contras, with what happened in Iran, with the wars, with the proxy. They're still doing it, but now they're doing it through different countries. And as soon as Afghanistan ended, it wasn't a coincidence that the war in Ukraine kind of sparked up again.
I think it was within a couple months. Like we needed a new war somewhere else, somewhere new to send our money. We left all of our weapons there too. They kept all of our weapons. It's like Taliban come in, they shut down the opium fields, like you said. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure they execute the pedophiles too, because there's a big pedophile problem. I could be wrong about that one, but I don't think it was the Taliban doing that. I think it was the groups that were fighting. We were this group.
Yes,
we were
they
fighting
were
along against
they
the
were
Taliban.
embedded with the United States,
Yeah,
and
so-
they were the ones that there was U.S. Service members that were actually charged and
they were-
prosecuted because they
for
spoke
ratting on
out
it.
and they talked to the media about all these little children that were being hurt by our allies in the region as we were fighting alongside them, protecting them, and allowing
They were
them
told to stay quiet as they
Yeah.
raped kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgusting.
Well, and this is why we have such an issue with soldiers coming home and hurting themselves, I think, because they participate in these wars. They see such egregious behavior. They realize that the higher ups in command don't really care. They realize that the purpose of the war was predicated off of lies. They realize that there's no real mission statement. There's no real victory to be found, and they come back and they're heartbroken because they're true believers. They believe in this country. They believe in the fight for freedom, and they realize that that's not what they were participating in. And this is why I'm so anti-war. This is why I'm such a non-interventionist. This is why I'm so concerned about the proxy war in Ukraine against Russia. This is why I'm so concerned about what it amounts to a proxy war between Palestine and Israel, seeing as we're kind of funding and arming both sides, the potential for war with Iran, the potential for war with China. I mean, all of these are totally unwinnable and catastrophic, particularly if they pop off simultaneously. And Biden is just he's just the PR representative, as the people like Victoria Nuland, which fortunately stepped down a few days ago. They're really the ones that direct things. Like, this is why when people say, yeah, we have bumbling idiots that are actually representing us, you're right. But the people that actually make these decisions, Victoria Nuland was responsible. She was in Dick Cheney's office. She was a top advisor to Dick Cheney with the war in Iraq. She actually worked under the Clinton administration too, I think with Yugoslavia. Then under George Bush, it was Iraq, Afghanistan. Then she migrates over under the Obama administration. She's responsible for, I think it was Yemen and like Libya. And then, I mean, this lady's the wake of death and destruction. Then she has this brief respite under Donald Trump. She then put back in charge of Ukraine under the Biden administration. I mean, wherever this lady goes, she is the grim reaper of the State Department. I am so grateful that she stepped down. But the truth is, she's just going to be replaced by another career politician that has just as much blood on their hands.
Yeah, I've been in this independent media field for over 20 plus years, and I've always been anti-war, no matter what the war, no matter what the conflict, and I've been criticized. I've been called a lot of different things by the corporate media, attacked on the left, attacked on the right, because some wars the left likes, some wars the right likes. And I'm like, no, whenever you cross that boundary of willing to be able to create hell on earth, to take human life, you're not on a good side here, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstances. I was against the Afghanistan war. I was against the Iraq war. I was against the war in Libya. I was against the war in Syria. I was against the war in Ukraine, mainly because when you look at the reality of these situations, a lot of them are sold to us through lies. A lot of them are built up on absolute bull crap that has no merit of truth, no ability to even discern what actually really is going on here. And then later, we always find out, yeah, they were just lying through their freaking teeth.
Yeah, I would say that they were all built upon lies.
I agree.
I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said, the soldiers over there. A few weeks ago, I had a talk with a friend who killed a man over in Iraq, and it's like, it eats him up. Because he's like, at the time, I thought I was fighting terrorists, but now I think I just killed some guy with his like family and kids. Like, bothers me every night. Like, stuff like that. These soldiers come back with that pain. It's like,
it's brutal.
Could you imagine you go kill a guy you thought you were fighting for your country, and you're like, oh, I just killed a guy with a family.
It's heartbreaking. I mean,
and if you look at it, and it gets more sinister. It gets more evil, especially what happened in Afghanistan, where we had a rendition program where random people were taken. They were sent to places like Egypt. They were sent to places like Guantanamo Bay. There's horrible stories of this happening under U.S. control, where some guy had a dispute with his neighbor about goats. The guy goes to the U.S. and says, "Hey, this guy's Taliban. I want his goats." He didn't say that he wants the goats, but they just had disputes. Marital disputes. Women were like, yeah, he's really bad. He's really Taliban. They would take these people and literally torture them in the most unspeakable, horrible ways.
And not even give them due process.
And no due process, total rendition program. And I can't even get into it's horror beyond horror of what you can't even imagine the most sinister, evilest people doing on the face of this earth, especially with small children, especially with family members. It's disgusting. What's that gentleman's name from the United Kingdom? I met him recently. Mario Nafal, I think his name is. He speaks about a situation where he was radicalized and he was imprisoned in one of these detention facilities in Egypt. Someone correct me. Someone will let me know.
I think I know who you're talking about,
yeah.
but I think you said the name wrong. I know the guy you're talking about because I talked to him before, but I can't think of his name before.
Me too. I've been on his show, but I'm blanking on his name.
I'm blanking on his name. I apologize to him
Something
sincerely.
But it's not the Mario. It's
But as we're literally spending our tax dollars, this is where our tax dollars are going to. We're paying for this kind of destruction, for this kind of hell on earth. Meanwhile, domestically, the situation is freaking horrible here in the United States, as the North Face just announced that they're going to be closing their only store in their hometown of San Francisco as the city's dying. There's a lot of problem. There's a lot of crime. Now, Jake, you know about this more than anyone else. The North Face, though, they're a pretty woke company. They're a company that promotes a lot of nonsense and bullcrap out there. I remember walking into their store and it was just like, approved message here, do this, be woke. You're bad if you're born a certain. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to support this store at all. Are they, essentially spurring on a situation that they called for that now they're paying the consequences for?
I'm from San Francisco, so we'll get to that in a second. But first off, with North Face, I think a lot of this is coming from the top. Like
Someone just told me just really quick, Mahid Nawaz is the
that's
individual.
right. Majid,
Majid Nawaz.
that sounds
Shouts out
correct.
to him, an incredible individual. His story, extremely powerful. Thank you for the commentators for letting me know about that. Sorry,
the same,
Jake,
yeah,
go
so
ahead.
BlackRock and Vanguard, they're the one pushing this DA on these DI. What is it?
DEI and
Yeah, they're
ESG.
the one pushing it on these companies. They're pushing them to be woke. They don't care if they lose money. It's like a bigger agenda to them. It's like it's ridiculous. And San Francisco is a completely failed city. I lived there for 20 years. I used to love it. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I loved it there so much, and it's just completely. It was a slow decline. About 10 years ago, it started going down slowly, and then it just got worse and worse. It got really bad before COVID. Then COVID hit and became completely unlivable. It was just crackheads all over the street. The hardest lockdowns in the country. I was the only person that would walk my dog without a mask on. People outside at the park, people would like turning their backs on me, jumping out of the way, just terrified, scared people. And they were so proud they had the strongest lockdowns in the world. And now the city won't come back. And now the mayor's like yelling, why won't people come back? They also push defund the police strongly. Now they're like, we need the police to do the job. The exact same mayor, exact same people, just complete clown shows. It's just
I used to go to San Francisco a lot because I know a lot of burners. I've been to Burning Man a couple times for full transparency.
Fun
Bunch
party.
of
I've been there
really
a few times too. Great party.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of really cool, awesome, creative individuals there. And then every time I would come back, it would always get a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And I feel it's like the boiling frog analogy. I don't think people realize how bad it is.
It's just I watch it just completely. Exactly. You watch it deteriorate. You live there. You get used to it. It becomes normal. Then I'd go somewhere else and I'd be like, wait, it's not normal to get your. Because I was like hiding luggage. People are like, what are you doing? You don't need to do that. Stuff like that. Because your windows get knocked out. Like if you don't have a parking spot, your car's gonna get broken too. Like every week. It's just like homeless people harassing you on the streets. It's litter everywhere. It's just so disgusting. People shooting up on the streets. People literally taking shits on the street. Yep. Just things you see, but you get desensitized to it. You start thinking it's the norm. Then you go somewhere else. You're like, wait, why is it like this? And even like the Burning Man scene started getting a little split between part of it's woke and part of it's more like the anarchist, like leave me alone. I think that might need to split into two parties even.
I think so too, especially what we saw within the last 3 years where there was even some kind of consideration about medical passport systems in order to enter Burning Man, which, again, it's supposed to be a representation of burning the man down as they're literally complying with the man overwhelmingly and saying, yeah, well, just tell us what to do and we'll do it, which is absolutely freaking ridiculous.
They
but that
party
year too,
for like 2 years.
yeah,
but they had a
rebel burn, which was awesome, and I wish I would have went to. I had my truck breakdown, and I was so disappointed because those individuals who said, you know what, the organizers are not going to do it. We're just going to have our own thing on our own way with no rules, no gate, no regulations, no bull crap, like it was supposed to be. And
how Burning Man's meant to be. And I think a lot of people on the right, they think, oh, Burning Man's a bunch of dumb hippies.
Yeah, we're seeing the comments now. They're like, you're going to your Bohemian Grove.
It's like split like half true, but there's an element of it that's the complete opposite of all about radical free expression. That's completely take care of yourself. You're supposed to bring everything for yourself. There's no handouts.
Yeah.
People think it's like communist. No, it's not communist. People give you things out of nothing. You're supposed to bring everything yourself. People just happen to be nice and bring extra stuff and give it to you. But
it's the
nothing's
ultimate
assured to
test
you
of personal responsibility and personal reliance on yourself as an individual to be responsible for you. So there's always a bunch of creative art stuff. There's different people from all different walks of life that come, but a lot of the people who learn, hey, whatever you got to bring everything in, but you also got to bring everything out. You got to clean up after yourself, and that kind of ethos is something that a lot of people could learn from, especially in a lot of these liberal cities where they just leave trash everywhere, which is disgusting. There's a clip going around now on social media of the streets of Paris, France, just showing just utter decay, rats everywhere, trash everywhere, cardboard everywhere. And this is something that isn't just happening in San Francisco. It's happening all around the Western world. Major city areas are directly under attack. The cities are the lifelines of countries. They're the ones where people always congregate. They're the ones where capital always circulates. And I think some people are saying, the leftists got what they voted for. They deserve it. And I'm like, hey, we're still in the same country together. We're still in the same kind of civilization together. We should give a damn about how things are going on in San Francisco. I know some online commentators are like, good, they deserve it. And I'm like,
If they're going to move and vote their policies elsewhere, is what's going to happen.
Yeah,
people don't realize they're going to take that and move it elsewhere. It's not good.
They already did in Austin.
Well, maybe yes, maybe no. I think Austin is more affected by the illegal immigrants. But if you look at Florida, a lot of people who were sick of what's happening in California and New York were actually smart enough to come here and vote red. And Florida, that previously was a purple state, is an overwhelming red state now. So I think Texas is going to turn blue, but it's not because of people from California. I think it's people coming across the border, being naturalized, and becoming citizens there.
Yeah, I have friends from San Francisco going to Texas that are be like, oh, I want to vote blue. I'm like, you're idiots. You realize you're fleeing that and you're voting the same. But I don't know. I think it's both.
It is. I mean, it's like the moderate Democrats from California that flee to Austin. It's the conservatives from California that flee to Florida, in my experience. I'm a libertarian that fled from California for Florida. But I mean, if you look at Austin, you can see the homelessness issue got really, really exacerbated because of all the Californians that came in there. They started to vote for these policies, and they started to implement the same nonsensical, public property malfeasance and allowing people to just shoot up on the streets. It's terrible because this is really like a disease that's spreading all across the country.
It's all spreading the same way. It's always the same symptoms that line up perfectly with each other. Open immigration, allowing criminality, woke district attorneys, and
no enforcement of property rights.
The
Taxes,
district attorneys are a big problem. People
The
don't realize how big of a
destruction
problem they are.
of communities, the destruction of churches, the destruction of small businesses, all of this lines up, and it's all happening in the same freaking way.
San Francisco literally had a district attorney who ran on making justice equitable, which means he would charge black people less for white people, and he did it. He actually was so ridiculous he got recalled even in San Francisco because he refused to put even hardcore black murderers in jail. So even San Francisco is like, we need to have some we need to have some people in jail.
This equity feels dangerous.
Well, his parents, it's people look this up. It sounds ridiculous. His parents were in jail because they killed a couple cops. They were in a terrorist organization. They were white, but they worked for some black liberation army, and the guy was a cokehead, and he sent them out to rob banks for him, and they ended up killing a few cops and were doing life in prison. So this guy hated cops, and he was in charge. He always talked about how he wanted to put cops in jail. So the cops just stopped working. It's it sounds like it can't be true, but it is.
No, I mean people really, they don't think about the incentive structure for cops, but when you consider that a cop has to engage with a homeless person who's a drug addict, oftentimes they're mentally ill, oftentimes they're violent, they're unpredictable. If they realize that by addressing that issue and removing them from the street, and you have a DA who's going to immediately release them back onto the street, they're going to stop taking that risk because it just means that they're going to have to do it 4 or 5 times a month. There's just for human survival instincts, you start to realize oh yeah, I'm not going to engage with these people because the DA is never going to prosecute. They're never going to do anything to actually address this issue. So I can't even blame the cops in that instance. Why would you?
Yeah, they pretty much just stop working because, well, literally I've seen there'll be times I see a black person get arrested on the street. No idea why he's getting arrested. Mobs would circle the cop, start filming, and be like, let him go, racist, racist. The guy could have just shot someone or raped someone, but people don't. They just jump in because he's black.
There's the crazy story in Europe of this white woman who stopped an entire airplane from taking off because a migrant was being deported. A migrant that, of course, was charged. I believe this is a long time ago. Someone correct me if I'm wrong here. With assaulting women and forcing himself on women, and this woman said, "No, this plane's not taking off. I'm going to scream. I'm going to shout until everyone goes off to prevent this deportation." And we're seeing that. We saw that yesterday with the Democrats voting against criminals literally being deported. That's the type of world that we're living in. But hey, we still have some forms of entertainment that are at least fun to watch and are a part of a larger culture that is fighting against it. And that, of course, is the fighting culture. I want to change topics here a little bit because we're about to go on Rumble, and I wanted to talk about this here on YouTube. And that's all the crazy fights that are going to be happening today and in the next few months. As, of course, I think the biggest story that a lot of people are talking about is this particular fight announcement from Netflix of all freaking platforms. Yep, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, July 20th, live streamed on Netflix. This is a crazy, shocking story. Mike Tyson is 58 years old. Jake Paul is 27. Some people are saying this is elder abuse. Some people are saying Jake is going to get his butt whooped. You're the fighter, Jake. What do you think is going to happen here?
I think Tyson's just too old. I love Tyson and all, but he was in his prime at like 25. He was an absolute killer when he was young. One of the best heavyweights ever. He just murdered people. But he was past his prime early because his trainer Customata died, and he kind of went off after that. And he's still a great boxer. He still will obviously beat up he'll maul most regular people. But I know a lot of people don't like Jake Paul, but he's a good fighter, man. Jake Paul can fight.
He's not bad.
He's just not known for he's picked people that are past their prime or smaller, MMA. Now a guy who's 57. And it'll probably still be a decent fight. Tyson will probably go a couple rounds with him, but I think with the cardio, it'll gas. And, Jake Paul's in good shape, probably freaking, I don't know if they're doing drug testing, but Jake Paul's going to be coming in there jacked out.
Do we have any
kind
details?
of ridiculous to me.
Do we have any details on how many rounds it's going to be? Is there going to be headgear? Like, I want to know if this is like an exhibition or if it's a real.
It's hard to get even cleared at that age. At 58, how is he going to get cleared? I mean, when I was fighting at like 40, it was really hard to get cleared.
Yeah.
So unless they do it in like Puerto Rico or Abu Dhabi, right? I think Abu Dhabi is going to be the place where a lot of the fighters kind of moving because they're more focused on actually doing things that interest the viewer rather than following all the rules and regulations.
This fight is actually supposed to be happening in Jerry World in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, which is nuts. I mean, if you're going to have 80,000 people watching this fight. And live on Netflix, it's going to be one of the biggest fights ever. I'm very concerned because I'm sure, just like you, huge fan of Mike Tyson. I'm very nervous about a man of his age getting in the ring with a guy who's, even though he's not an elite boxer, he's still in his prime.
He's a good boxer, though. I know people don't like Jake Paul. I think he's
good.
a lot better people give him credit for. He's like really good. He's not like world championship level, but he's pretty good, man. The guy's.
I agree.
He's better than people give him credit for. He can actually box. I know a lot of people don't like him, so say, oh, he sucks. But he trains hard. He has great trainers. He's a good athlete. And like I said, what is he, 27? And he's fighting Tyson. Yeah. I mean, Tyson's one of the best of all times, but I think the age is still going to be too much. Yeah. I think it might be good for a couple rounds, but Jake Paul's pretty quick. He hits hard. He's in shape. With your age, your conditioning starts going a little bit, and just the muscle mass, the speed, like all of it. I think Paul's is going to be too much for him, unfortunately. It's sad to have a guy at Tyson's level. Yeah, but Tyson's already is way past his prime already. He already wasn't in his prime like 15, 20 years ago.
But if anything, as long as he survives it, I hope it's a $30 or $40 million payday. If so, God bless.
Yeah, love or hate Jake. Yeah, love or hate Jake. He plays the perfect villain. He gets a lot of attention, and he's been really working hard at this boxing thing, and he's taking it very seriously. People are sharing a lot of video footage of Tyson sparring and Jake sparring, and people are saying that Tyson is going to definitely whoop his ass. But again, the age, the cardio makes a huge freaking difference.
It's important to know, too. That video that they're showing of Tyson sparring, number one, it's 4 years ago. Number two, when interviewed, I think it was by Rogan about this, Tyson said that he was in bed for a week after doing that for a few minutes. He looked very impressive, but I think that the truth is his body it's not at the age level that he can actually sustain this. So to see him train to get prepared for this is going to be really challenging.
Tyson also smokes a lot of weed.
He's not going to be able to properly train for it, and he's not going to be able to keep that like speed and pressure for more than like a round. And he's not going to have that old where he's just boom, boom, just weaving and just throwing. He's not going to have the same power, not going to have the same speed, not going to have the. I mean, he might be able to knock out Jake Paul first round, but I doubt he has the. He definitely doesn't have the power he used to.
Well, if he fails to accomplish that in the first round, he's going to be gassed and absolutely destroyed in the next few rounds.
And Jake Paul is great conditioning with Nate Diaz. He went all 8 rounds like hard. You know, it was 8 rounds or 10 rounds they win. He never. I thought he was tired. He never slowed down.
That was a great fight. And you got to give credit where credit is due. Jake is doing a lot for the fighters. He's
paydays.
He's not only giving them paydays, but he's starting conversations about proper negotiations, proper health care for them. Yep. And again, he plays the perfect villain, but he's a lot smarter than a lot of people give him credit to. And he's on the top of his game. Everyone's going to be paying attention to this, and he's putting himself in a difficult situation. He beats the crap out of Mike Tyson. Oh, you just beat up an old guy. Yeah. He gets beat up by Mike Tyson. You got beat up by an old guy.
That's true.
So that's not a win-win situation for him, but it's a situation that is going to get a lot of eyeballs, a lot of money, and a lot of people talking about the sport and the business. And I think, let's be honest here, you might correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Jake has propelled the fighting sports business far more effectively than a lot of bigger industry insiders.
I think he's been great for boxing and for some of the MMA guys. He's gotten them big paydays. He's been really good picking his partners, though. Like, all the guys, he gets smaller. Like, Nate spent most of his career fighting 155. They fought at 190. That's a big jump up in weight. Things like that.
Jake Paul is, I just looked it up, New York Post, opening line, Negative 350. So more than a 3-1 favorite for Jake Paul.
Yeah. Again, like I don't hate Jake Paul. I think he's done a lot of good things. I think he works hard, but it's like,
dude,
Tyson's just so old. But I'm gonna watch the fight. We're probably all gonna watch it, right?
I'll definitely watch it. It's so impressive that Jake Paul went from this YouTuber to being as I said, not an elite boxer, but a very legitimate
really
boxer.
good. Yeah, really
like
good.
a really legitimate boxer. That's
not
impressive.
Not far off from the elite level. He's right there. He's right there. Yeah, he's right.
I don't know.
I was really
And he
impressed when I
only
first watched the
started, what, 5 years
fight because
ago?
I thought it was gonna be like a joke, and then I go, "Oh, this guy actually can fight."
Yeah, dude, it's amazing.
And you look at the kind of political takes that he has compared to his brother; they're a lot better. And then he was working. He was working very closely with Vivek Ramaswamy. He did spaces. He did conversations. He did videos with Vivek Ramaswamy. So
we thought for a second we were going to have him on the show in Iowa.
yeah, he was supposed to be in Iowa, and then last minute there was weather that was absolutely freaking crazy. There's another fight today that a lot of people are also talking about, and that is Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou. Francis did a lot better the last fight that he was in that a lot of people expected him to get his ass whooped, and he didn't. He actually sustained and I think won that fight against Tyson Fury.
Yeah, he's someone I know personally, and he probably hits harder than anyone I've ever seen. His power is just insane, and his boxing.
You ever spar him?
I've done more grappling with him. I've never sparred him.
Yeah.
But
I would recommend against
I've like
it.
play sparred with him before a little bit because sometimes we're grappling. You know,
Right.
he'll get frustrated. He'll start like kind of sparring me.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh shit, he's throwing punches at me. but we've never gotten like close to getting a fight though. He's cool. But there's maybe a couple times we've gone a little hard. But he's fucking strong. His power is insane. Like,
Yeah. He's one of the most like unbelievable physical specimens I think has ever walked the earth. He's crazy jacked.
It's hard to get sparring partners for him because he hurts people. You know, 'cause he doesn't know his own power, and he'll just like blast them and they'll fall over. But yeah, no, I was impressed with his boxing because considering his kicking, wrestling, all that, and just pure boxing, and then he could have arguably beat one of the best boxers in the world. So this fight's a toss-up. He's that good, and he's been strictly focusing on boxing now.
Yeah.
You know, he's got Dewey Cooper training him, Eric Nixick. They're out there in Saudi Arabia training him. He's got great trainers. It's going to be interesting.
Do you think he's gonna actually ever fight John Jones?
I mean, probably not because the UFC would have to come in and offer a good payday. And if he's making more boxing, why? I would love to see that fight.
He'll probably make 4 times his largest purse boxing versus UFC. I
Yeah,
imagine.
probably about that. Yeah. So it's like, why would he go in and fight him if the pay's not that good?
Yeah, I think that's always been an interesting thing to me because it seems to me that the UFC is more popular than boxing is at this stage. Yet the paydays are still so minuscule comparatively. Do you have any insight as to why that is?
I just think because they've been able to keep the pay down. Dana White has been able to keep it down. They have kind of a monopoly.
Right.
And there was twice they had real competition. Once with Pride Fighting in Japan, and then also with Strikeforce. That's I was the champ at the time of that. Both the time they started stealing fighters from the UFC, but with bidding wars. So both times UFC bought the show and killed the show. So they bought their competition to destroy it because they were starting to have like it was a show even with them.
Did Strikeforce pay well?
Yeah, they paid really well. I had to take a pay cut to go to the UFC. So it sucks to be you take way less money to go to what's supposed to be the premier organization in the world. It sucks it's like that, but there's more fame.
Yeah, well, so the reason that you want to be in the UFC though is because you want to have more fame and you want to face the best, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but there's also really good guys outside the UFC, especially Strikeforce was stacked then. But yeah, eventually I decided I wanted to go fight GSP, but it sucked that I was because they've been trying to sign me for years, but I was getting way more money outside the UFC. So it's like, why am I going to take half the money in the UFC?
Well, Strikeforce.
I remember watching that fight with GSP, and I was
Yeah.
rooting
Tough
against
one.
GSP because I really didn't like him.
Yeah.
Nothing
GSP 's
against him.
actually a great guy,
He sounds
but-
like an awesome, incredible. I just didn't like the style, his style of fighting. But I think fighting and fighting culture, there's something to say, especially when it comes to their kind of approach towards politics today. You look at all the other sports stars; they're kind of muzzled. They can't say what they want. They can't express their opinions, and if they do, it's usually approved corporate talking point. So I have a lot of respect because I think the culture of it resonates with a lot of the populist movement out there that talks about being strong, taking care of yourself, being personally responsible for yourself. So I've always been a big sports fan. I've dabbled in it personally myself for a while, and I think if you're bringing up kids, it's a perfect way to teach them self-defense. It's in order to avoid larger conflicts, and the more you learn it, the more you actually avoid larger fights in your life, which I think is absolutely critically important because a lot of people on the internet have not been punched in the face, and you could clearly see that.
Yeah,
Right?
well,
That's what they're in
and-
their mouth.
Yes.
Yeah, mental health, self-discipline, diet, weight control, everything. I like. There's so many positives that come from training. But quick tangent before we transfer over to Rumble. Do you think that that you and the Diaz brothers will ever stop fighting people in the streets? I'm nervous for you guys, man. I'm like,
I hope so.
Okay. I hope so.
I'm
too.
hearing rumors that Masvidal might try showing up at one of our seminars, so hopefully I don't break off.
No. Oh no.
He's already been arrested though for like street fights, but I don't know. We'll see.
Do you want that
We've been- we- we-
BMF belt?
We've been trying to stay out of trouble, but I don't know. But what do we do if he shows up? So
We have a super chat from Omega Supreme W Cheese saying Jake Paul is okay if you let him bomb on you, but a TRT injected Tyson is going to have 2 solid rounds. That's Jake has never seen before. That's Omega Supreme W Cheese. We also have some Rumble rants that we're going to be reading in a little bit, but we're going to, of course, finally be free to say whatever we want. And I know Jake has been waiting for this moment. I've been waiting for this moment as well, as now we are moving off of YouTube, off of all the other social media platforms, and going over to rumble.com. If you haven't checked out rumble.com, what are you doing? You should be doing it. You should be supporting platforms that allow free speech no matter what. So if you go to rumble.com, we are on the front page right now. Scroll down a little bit, and then you could see Jake and my face up there right now. Click on that show, because we will be moving off of this platform that, of course, is censorious, that, of course, is doing everything in their power to try to stop us as much as they can, but only because of you guys sharing it, you guys actually being here with us, that we're still here on this particular platform. The conversation gets a lot more interesting, a lot more spicier, as of course we're going to have a special message from this athletic beast here to start off this broadcast. Tune in for that, as well as conversations about Rabbi Shmuley, the conflict in the Middle East, all right now on rumble.com. Jake, before we move over and get off of all of these other platforms, where can people check out your work and support you?
Jake Shields, AJJ on Twitter. That's probably the most fun. I'm Jake Shields on Instagram. I don't post there quite as much. So just those 2 places, I guess.
If you don't follow this man on Twitter, you do not live a proper life. At Liberty
Your
Lock
existence is boring.
Yes, exactly. At Liberty Lock Pod on X, I say what Jake says without quite as much reckless abandon, but I fucking love it.
It's my style. I just kind of.
I know, dude. It's great.
I can't control myself. Like, you know what? I'm gonna start posting a little more with thinking. Nah.
I have moments like this.
Somebody take my phone.
I literally have moments, and I'm like, I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do. I should
Yeah,
not
doing
tweet.
it.
And I'm like, that's fine.
My girl's probably tried taking my phone before. It doesn't work.
Liberty Lockdown's the show. I will be back on YouTube in a day or two. So make sure you subscribe while you're here on Liberty Lockdown, and then transfer over and subscribe to the Best Political Show, as well as Liberty Lockdown on Rumble, and pick up your phone and pick up the podcatcher app.